Welcome everybody. Welcome to the spot, the Stacked After Hours spot. I am your host, Natalie Cosby, and welcome to the show for Grown Folks Talk. Happy Women's History Month, first and foremost. To all my ladies out there, this conversation tonight, we are celebrating you and going a little bit deep and talking about our girlfriends, our friendships, especially at this beautiful age of 40 plus. I want to ask you guys a question. If you met your friend group today, would you choose them? Not based on history, not based on who you knew in your 30s, not based on who went through that divorce or breakup with you, but based on who you are becoming right now. I think at this age, friendship, it hits different. We are evolving, y'all. I mean, our bodies clearly are changing. Some of us have stopped drinking. Some of us are in therapy. Some of us got married. We got divorced. And we may even have found our peace. And sometimes with all of that change, that growth disrupts your friend group. And I realize we don't talk enough about uncomfortable adult friendships and how uncomfortable they can become. Think about the subtle competition that you may feel, or the teasing that doesn't feel playful, or the jealousy no one names, and the shrinking that we do to keep the peace. So here's the hard truth. It's easy to blame your girlfriends and your friend group, but it's harder to ask, why did I choose that dynamic in the first place? So tonight, we're not gossiping, we're not blaming, we're getting honest. And I could not think of a better person to have this conversation with than Dr. Rose Moten. Hi, hello. Just a little background about Dr. Moten. She is a distinguished. I got to give you your flowers, girl. I got to give you your flowers. She is a distinguished psychologist, author, speaker, and personal development strategist. She is the founder of Bloom Transformation Center in Detroit, a wellness center, and I'm all about wellness, that integrates traditional mental health services with innovative approaches to help people and their barriers and accelerate personal growth. She is widely recognized. She has been on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the OWN Network, TEDx, the Chicago Sun-Times, and of course, where she is from, the Detroit Free Press. And during COVID, she was acknowledged nationwide as one of the leading mental health voices in helping individuals navigate uncertainty, anxiety, and major transitions. So Dr. Moten, welcome to Stacked After Hours, girl.
It's a pleasure to be here. This is such a relevant topic too, right?
Yes.
As we enter Women's History Month. Yes. So thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on this amazing platform. This is what we need to kind of just distract us from so much of what's going on in the world, to have something that's going to actually enrich us. So I'm here for it.
It is absolute. There's so much craziness. And sometimes it's funny because I always go to my girlfriends when I have angst and things are just don't feel right with the world, or they don't feel right with me. And I'm always wondering, like, people ask me, like, why do you need these friendships? And I think that's a bigger question. Like, why are women's relationships so essential for us?
Yeah. Well, we know just because we've been involved personally with it, but from even a clinical standpoint, science shows, there's a term in psychology called tend and befriend. And what science actually shows is that women's friendships, healthy, women's friendships actually helps to prolong the longevity of women. It helps with their emotional and their overall mental health. Community as a whole is important, but when you can have those friendships, it's funny because when we first connected, I'm recovering. I had major surgery just 3 weeks ago. And I just posted a picture because we were joking before we came online, because one of my girlfriends came over and brought me dinner, and I'm not on any more pain meds, so we had some martinis, and I had the little martini shaker back there. But I posted and I said, so many, this has been just a reminder in these 3 weeks that I've been down, just how important our girlfriends are in our lives, because they have shown up for me. They have sent meals, they fed me. And as someone who is usually the giver, this is what I do for a living. It has been very humbling, but also such a blessing and rewarding to experience that over the last 3 weeks. It's really highlighted just how important our friendships are. So, everything, like I said, we know on an emotional level when we're around those friends that we align with, that it feels good. And science proves it. Science proves it. It helps to regulate our nervous system. It helps to, again, increase our longevity, all of those things that we should be striving for.
So it's always because I find the women that have like really solid friendships with their friends, they always seem like they hold them so close and they're very protective. But I've also met a lot of women over the years that be like, I don't have a lot of friends. And I always like, how psychologically how do you get to that space where you're not like the girl's girl?
When you're not, so like the no new friends type of space?
Not even the no new friends, and nor do I have a lot of friends because I don't trust.
I get it. It's nothing wrong. I always say if you have 2 or 3 like friends that you trust, and those are folks that you can be your most authentic self with, you can be vulnerable, you're winning. Let me just say that, because quantity doesn't necessarily mean you have better friendships. Sometimes not sometimes, all the times, it's the quality of those friendships. So you can have someone who has 3 quality friendships or even 2 quality friendships, and you have another person that may have what they consider 100 different friends. It doesn't mean that their quality is better. We want to really, get more away from the numbers. But at this point in life, everyone's different. As a psychologist, I recognize, I do a lot of work in helping people understand who they are, the true essence of who they are. And so there's certain personality types that are not very, as open as others. They're not, right. They may be more isolative than others. And so they may be okay with just having 1 or 2 friends, and we don't want to necessarily judge them. And then there's others who are so very social and they can't go anywhere without running into someone that they love. And if that works for them, that works for them. What concerns me is when we get to a point and people say no new friends, because I have friends that go as far back as elementary school with me, but which is amazing. Like, your ride or dies, right? One of my friends, we joke and we say we know where the bodies are buried, so to speak, and hold each other's secrets near and dear. But I have met some, just within the last few years, people that I consider to be some people I can be most vulnerable with. So we want to be very careful about that whole mentality of no new friends, because every stage of life we're growing. And so we are going to be attracting, hopefully, people that reflect the level of growth that we've had.
Yeah. Somebody said, keep your circle small, but old say keep your circle. So I want to kind of unpack the no new friends mentality, because sometimes I feel like when I hear that, is it like you've been burnt? Are you, is it just like, I like where I'm staying? Because I do feel like, I know for me, I've met people over the years that I just connect to, and I want to learn more, because I realize also that relationship helps me learn about myself.
Yeah. It could be those things, both can be true, right? So it can be folks who have been burned, because if you've ever, and I know I've been burned by friendships, but if that can be very hurtful, that can really diminish your trust in others. So you can understand that, but we can't allow someone's level of immaturity or someone's lack of integrity prevent us from really plugging into the fullness and richness of what connection does for us. So that very well could be true. People conditioning, even some people grew up with this mentality. I meet a lot of women and met a lot of women in my practice over the years that grew up in households where they couldn't even have friends over, where they never went to sleepovers, where they never experienced, at an early age, like I'm talking about, those friendships. And so these individuals may just have an inherent distrust of others. I always, as I said in the beginning, you want to challenge yourself with that no new friends mentality. Also challenge yourself another, and you may be going there, so I don't want to jump ahead, but I know women over the years to say, I'm better friends with men than women.
Yeah, girl, please. Can we unpack? Wait. Can we unpack that? Like, I have girlfriends. They may have like 2 or 3 friends, but they have most of their friends are with men.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, I can't with all the women. We're catty, we're this, we're that, we're this.
Yeah. And maybe that could be true, but I will say for myself personally, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings out there, what I have found that most of the women who say that, because I have male friends, I'm sure you have male friends, right? I find most of the women who are just so adamant about that, I don't do women friendships, I prefer the men, or I have more, tend to be the ones that you usually have to watch out for. They tend to be the catty ones.
And there's that.
I mean, that's just been my observation.
Well, I want to go back to something, because you said something about people who weren't allowed to have friends over and all of those things. I feel like as we get older, I feel like certain dynamics for women, we tend to recreate our childhood dynamics in our friendships.
Absolutely.
And I'm still trying to understand, I feel like some of us are really stuck in our 12 to 16-year-old selves and how we navigate certain friendships.
Yeah, definitely. It depends on even the level of the nurturing you got, your attachment styles. I know we talked about that a little bit in the prep before tonight's podcast, but it's unfortunate that the friendships, just like intimate relationships, is like fertile ground for people to have a lot of projection going on, right? Or a lot of displacement going on. So it provides this opportunity for individuals for unfinished business that they may have from their childhood, unresolved issues, wounds that they may have, can be triggered in friendships when you have not done the work, right? And I see someone said those unhealed 12-year-old selves playing out in adulthood. So very true. I remember years ago, a very intuitive friend of mine making an observation. She had come to one of my retreats, and she'd seen me in other settings as well. And she said something that I had never considered before, but when she said it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. She told me she said, you tend to attract women who have just mother wounds.
What does she mean? Okay.
So I've had some friendships in the past. It was the dynamic, because I'm a mom of 4, all my children are adults now, but you can imagine in my 20s when I had my first son when I was just 20, but I had, 4 kids by the age of 31, 32. Okay. And what I realized is a lot of these friends saw me mothering my children, in a loving, consistent way. And if they did not get that growing up, it could be triggering to them, where I had friendships where people would say, well, you're not showing, if you're a mom of 4 and building a business and doing that, you can't be there every beck.
Right.
I started to realize after that observation was made, it started to make so much sense, because the things that I'm like, why is that such a big issue, or why is that triggering for this person? I realized it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with these unhealed wounds really being triggered by watching someone who was being, that archetype of a mother, consistent,
Right.
loving, supportive. And if a person did not get that, that can be very unsettling to them to be surrounded by that. That's not everyone, because we have plenty of people who have done the work to repair their wounds, to work on healing their wounds, to recognize the triggers and not be triggered by that. But that's something you have to definitely consider.
Dr. Rose, what is, because you talked about that, like those wounds, but what are the attachment styles that you have seen in female friendships that show up that
Yeah.
causes that? Like, what are some of the attachment styles
So,
that
you definitely have secure attachment. I want to make sure I get all of them, right? So
Okay.
I'm just moving, because I talk about this a lot in the press. So you have the secure attachment, of course. That's what I just talked about. That's someone who comes from a household where their needs are met, where they have parents who are invested into them, parents that are showing them consistency. They're showing up when they're supposed to show up. They're not abandoning, their child's needs. And that results in an adult that it just has this sense of trust when it comes to others. Then you have the anxious attachment style, where maybe as a child, the parents' love was conditional, conditional, or it was predicated on if this child did right or wrong on what the level of love they're going to get. So there's this level of anxiety of always having to perform or to overgive and to not implement boundaries. Then you have avoidant attachment styles, and these are the people who just, you can't get close. What comes to mind, I remember years ago in friend groups when we were younger, and I had a very, more sizable probably, where we would get together in our 20s and go have brunch. And there would be, how we share as women, and we're sharing what's going on. And then there would be that one person who never shares anything about their life, anything about, what's going on, but is always taking in information from everyone else.
Kind of like a collector.
Kind of like a collector. And the more you observe that, the more I started to realize that, just how that person's upbringing really shaped that type of interaction. Of being kind of very secretive and protective. And, you don't want to share everything with everyone. We know that. But in friendships, there's an expected reciprocity that goes on. I'm going to be a little vulnerable and trust you with this. You, in turn, be a little vulnerable, because after a while, I started saying,
I'm not sharing. I'm not sharing anything with you because you don't share.
Yeah. So, but all of that goes back, everything goes back to, those early formative years and the impact that our caregiving, our primary caregivers gave to us. It all goes back to that. And again, it's not written in stone. If you came from, unfortunately, a dysfunctional household, or parents who were not consistent in their nurturing of you, it does not give you a life sentence of any of these detrimental ways, because we all, once we become adults, we have the opportunity to do the work to heal from that, to do the healing, and to incorporate appropriate coping strategies. So when those triggers do come up, we don't have to allow them to take over us.
Yeah. I know I come from a big family, and I think my attachment style is something, I feel like they fall between wherever I was in my life. Sometimes it's very secure, because I think I've always been a person that has connected people, but then some of my insecurities come out and they show up. I don't necessarily think I was avoidant, though. Because I was always sharing, or probably oversharing sometimes. But I always wonder, like, when you get into those connective styles and you're in a friend group, I feel like sometimes there'll be drama, sometimes there'll be competitiveness coming up as you start to kind of navigate it, and you end up staying in it. And I think it just starts to be like, oh, this is how we function. So why are some of us are just really connected to those competitive and dramatic friendships?
Yeah. So I talk a lot. I recently posted a reel on my social site that really got a large response from individuals, where I talk about how some people, their nervous system is just really conditioned to be at this fight. When you think of competitiveness, you don't have a calm nervous system when you're competing with someone.
At all.
You don't. When you are competing, and it's natural, like be it in sports, be it, whatever you're doing, you're debating someone, whatever, your nervous system has to be activated, because that just puts you in a better position to win, so to speak. Right. The issue becomes, we don't always have to have our nervous system in this fight or flight, this competitive mode. But for some people, it's their baseline, because they grew up in an environment of going back to, some people like, well, I should keep going back to childhood, because childhood really does imprint a lot on us. But if you grew up in an environment where it was highly competitive, like I said, you had to compete for your parents' attention, or you had to perform to even get the basic love that every child is entitled to, that just doesn't go away because you're outside of that household. You now are transferring that behavior into your friend groups. And, there are some friends that you will find, let me just say this, those people who like to keep up the drama, they will find and attract other friends who like to keep up the drama with them, because now they're vibrationally aligned. But when you have others in that friend group, because I consider myself as a person, I like a calm nervous system. And so if I'm around folks and they're always wanting to bring up the past, or do you remember when you did this? Or you remember when that person did it? I already know this is someone who cannot deal with calm, and they're bringing up stuff from the past, or they're making little microaggressions or saying little things just to disrupt the calm that's in the room. Because for some people, calm does not feel safe. For me, calm feels safe. For other folks, what feels safe or normal to them is the drama. The accelerated nervous system. Yeah.
Right. So why do some people repeatedly find themselves like in those unhealthy or disruptive folks with that disruptive nervous system, unhealthy friendships? And what should they be examining in themselves?
Yeah. First, they have to recognize there's a different way. Right? They find themselves repeated in them because anything we do often enough becomes our norm. So if for so long your nervous system has been in fight or flight, which is now your baseline, that's your norm. So that's the only thing you're seeking that out in relationships, friendships, what have you, situations. These are the people that will always, if you actually see their algorithm on social media, it's probably fights, it's probably stuff that just, for me and you, would probably disrupt our nervous system, but it becomes their norm. If you don't know that there's a more healthy norm, you're not going to seek it. So the first thing you have to do is recognize it doesn't always have to be like tense or anxious or accelerated or competitive. It can be calm, and that's a beautiful place to be. With your nervous system. So first you have to recognize, and sometimes people don't, or by the time they do recognize it, they have shattered or damaged friendships irreparably.
That's interesting. I always wonder, like, is it you are what you attract, or is that energy just being always, you're pulling it in and you're embracing it?
Yeah.
It also kind of helps us distract ourselves from what we need to work on. No?
Yeah, it does. It definitely does, because we are, and this is science, it may sound woo-woo to folks, but we are energetic beings. Science is increasingly, especially like quantum physics, showing how we are magnetic beings. So each and every one of us carry a magnetic field around ourselves. So whatever, and you, when I talk about the nervous system, because I'm huge on nervous system, even at my center, one of our biggest offering is we do sound bath meditations because that helps people balance their nervous system and regulate it and things of that sort. And so what we do know is that, you know, we are magnetic beings. And so our nervous system, by definition, when I talk about the nervous system, I talk about the CNS, the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord. Literally, that's just a bunch of nerve cord, so it's energetic, you know, running through our bodies. And so if we're always like this, even if you don't see it, because a person could be sitting here very calm, paying attention to you, but inside it's stress and it's tension going on. And that is being magnetized out, and you are attracting that into energy. Your life. Yeah, you're attracting that energy into your life. And something as simple as flipping the switch and deciding, I want to see what it feels like to be calm, can change your life in record time, you know. It really can.
I want to move us forward into really examining healthy and unhealthy friendships. And I always feel like emotional maturity is always that theme, like the growth, especially now that we're like 40, 50, approaching 60. Like I said, I see some of us still in our 12-year-old 16 selves, even at 40 and 50. But can you define, because I've always been like, I'm emotionally mature. And then I'll do something. I'm like, Natalie, you just shouted at that friend, which was not warranted, and you just went off. Like, what are traits of just a healthy friendship in general?
You know, traits of a healthy reciprocity is definitely important. It's also, you know, for you to have a healthy friendship, there has to be a sense of knowing yourself. You know, by definition, emotional intelligence is how well do you know yourself? How well are you able to manage your emotions? And how well do you know others who may approach life from a different perspective than you, understanding everyone does not view the world through the same lenses as you do, but respecting and honoring and making and being intentional about understanding what their worldview is, even if it's not like yours. So for a friend, we don't need our friends to be just like us. That really doesn't help for growth. It's okay to have friends who are different, be it different ethnic groups, backgrounds, religious backgrounds, even, you know, whatever those differences are. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they agree with, but what is important and what defines just emotionally healthy friendships is your ability to kind of just, as they say, empathize or put yourself in your friend's shoes to see things from their perspective. Because we've all had friends, we've been that friend that our friends have said, girl, I can't believe you're doing that. Or, you know, that's not a good look for you, you know, but not to necessarily judge, right? To understand the whys behind. I tell people all the time, I don't care how crazy a behavior may seem, there's always a why behind it. And if we can understand why someone is behaving that way, then we have a better understanding of them, and we can show up better as a friend to help them navigate that. So you may have friends who grew up in a household that had domestic abuse in them. They're going to show up in relationships in a certain type of way, you know, be it intimate relationships or friendships, because they've had a different experience than maybe you have. I grew up with, you know, both parents in the house and pretty much a stable childhood until my father became ill when I was 12. But those early formative years, just, you know, beautiful. You understand?
Right.
And I've had over the years to people where I will go back and reflect on just some of my great childhood memories. I remember someone saying it wasn't a girlfriend, but it was at this time a husband. I joke and tell
Right.
people I've been married 1.5 times, but I just remember this person saying to me in my midst of reflecting, saying, "I'm so tired of hearing about you and your happy ass childhood."
Oh,
And that was just like, whoa,
mhm.
because but it was a perfect illustration of how your calm nervous system, or your experience that you wouldn't even think would be triggering to another person can be triggering to them. And so it's important for us to just understand, even with our friend groups. You think about, I don't know why this just crossed my mind, but I want to put it out there, because I've had friends upwards of 20, 30, 40 years. And I just remember about 10 years ago, a friend that we had been friends at that point for about 15, almost 20 years, and them finally sharing something with me that they'd never shared before, but it helped me to understand them so much more. Now, it just took them that long to do it. No judgment, but it's, because maybe they didn't feel safe enough or vulnerable enough to go there. But we have to understand, so many of us, even if we're showing up looking good, smelling good, we got the degrees, we got everything that looks all good on the outside. So many people are still struggling with a lot of eternal distress and disruption that we may not even realize.
Hmm. You know what? I've been in this space, and I've had a couple conversations with girlfriends about alignment, and
Mhm.
you are going through a transition. I think we actually probably somebody had a question about this earlier. It was on the thing. Um, like, how do you show? Yes, how do you? What do you do when the compassion that you have for someone? Thank you, Val.
Yeah.
Um, and you can tell that they're unhealed in various ways, and consciously uncouple, or do you address the situation, or do you just or do you go into silence? And I think this happens a lot when we are
Mhm.
going through our own transformation, and we are trying to heal ourselves and get right with ourselves. And when you start to make that change, your friends ain't always up for that because they
No.
connected with you in a different way. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Yeah. First, you got to understand your growth will disrupt the system.
Right.
Your growth will disrupt the system, because and it's because we have these, as you were talking at the beginning of the show, these defined systems. That's the loud friend, or that's the rowdy friend, or this is the friend that holds our purses when we go out, whatever.
Right.
Anything that comes in, any type of growth or change can disrupt that system. And everyone doesn't like change. So even if that person who's doing the growth is excited about, this expanded awareness that they have, everybody's not necessarily going to be excited for them. But again, when you talk about the tenets of a good friendship, a good friend celebrates the growth in their friend. They don't want to jeopardize or sabotage it. But what sometimes happens is that the jeopardization or the sabotaging of something, and oftentimes it's unconscious. They don't even realize it's going on. They're just trying to reestablish this balance, or this like harmony and frequency or alignment that they've been used to. Because when you grow, and I'm
Mhm.
careful about doing this because it's not like this is better or this is worse, but
Right.
we're just going to do this, right? But when you grow and the other person is not at that point that they want to grow, there's some disharmony there. And so, in any relationship we're in, and I'm using this, I talk about this in my book, Bloom 7 Steps. In any relationship we're in, be it friendships, be it romantic, intimate relationships, we want to seek harmony. So, when there's some disharmony, the options are that this person either grows and comes here, now we're in harmony, or this person here returns back to that alignment that they once enjoyed. And I can tell you this, it's so much easier for this person to do this than that person to do this.
Or can you
Which
do this? Can
you
you just,
definitely can do that.
I
Look,
mean, I feel like, but the funny thing is Dr. Rose, and I think I've had people separate from me because probably I was in a toxic space. That happened to me like
yeah,
in my 30s. She's just like, I
yeah,
can't do you no more.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
yeah.
hurt, but I understood
Mm,
where, because I overshared some things, and that's made me steadily stop. There's certain things people don't always want to hear.
yeah,
And then that happened to me recently where I had to, I was just like, and it wasn't that she was here or here. I just felt like
in alignment.
it wasn't in alignment.
Yeah, it wasn't in alignment. So yeah, you definitely can do this, okay? And that can be one of the most healthiest things you can do. If, all else has kind of failed and you're not getting anywhere, I've had to do this with some folks, who, I didn't started not respecting boundaries, or, just really kind of just crossed the line on some things that typically I've given several chances for. So I've even come up with a term. I tell people I lovingly release. I may not even have that conversation with them, but I'll say to myself, I have to lovingly release that person. I have to lovingly release them. I don't wish them any harm, but I can no longer. And we know that by the time it gets there, you had all the red flags that that's what you need to do. When you're looking at the phone and you're just like, oh my God, your first reaction is like a nervous system, like, oh, they're calling again. Or you find yourself the only time you're calling a particular friend is when you're in a car because you have a midnight time to talk to them, where it's like, okay, I got 10 minutes here, so let me get this out the way. A friendship should never be, let me get contact out the way, because you really don't want to do it,
Right.
So sometimes you have to, in friendships, and it doesn't have to be a matter of I have to end it because she's right and or I'm wrong and she's right, or she's wrong and I'm right. Sometimes we just don't align anymore, and that's okay. That's okay. And that could be temporary, because I've had friendships where we're in certain points of our lives where we go like this, and then we
Come
come
right
back
back.
together, and then
Right.
maybe this and come back together. Yeah.
I wonder if, like, I feel like some people, they want to, like, if they're here or here.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel like people, a lot of, do they pretend to keep because maybe of history, or do they stay in this space? I feel like it becomes a very inauthentic space,
Yeah.
especially if you're
Yeah.
not addressing it or talking about it, or you
Yeah.
let things slide. And I always
Yeah.
like, what are the red flags when you are going through this that we
Mhm.
often ignore or just sweep under the rug?
Yeah, so the red flags can be, like I said, you notice your nervous system is
Mhm.
kind of disrupted when you are dealing with them, right? You see the phone call and you're just like, where is this going to take me? Because you don't expect to feel good after that phone call, right? That's a red flag. Another red flag would be microaggressions. So, the little jokes that people say that are offensive, but it's supposed to be, oh, I'm just kidding. The microaggressions, the projection, things of that sort. There's so many, like I said, by the time it gets to the point that you are one of the questions there, I love that where she said consciously uncoupling or unfriendshipping with
Mhm.
that person. By the time it gets there, you've collected ample evidence, typically over the years. When I think about, two of the friendships that these are people I still love to this day, but I just had to release. This was not a knee-jerk decision. This was years of kind of giving people chances, having the conversations, establishing your boundaries that repeatedly were not respected. And, as a sign of self-care for myself, I knew what I needed to do. I couldn't do that. Some people, as you said, will stay in these things forever because maybe they were conditioned to believe, the quantity of years you've been, y'all been friends for 25 years, you can't let that go, and it's just like, you don't ever fool yourself to stay in something because of the quantity of time or quantity of years that you've been in that. That's not good self-care. That's not really advocating for, your well-being at that point. So, just be honest enough to recognize the red flags, but also be brave enough to broach it with the friends when they cross lines with you. And if you're the one who crossed the line, be open enough to not be defensive when someone or a friend comes to you to want to talk to you about how you may have made them feel.
So I always want to dive into this topic, and I think it's gossip and cattiness. Girl, the gossip and the cattiness, and I know this probably goes back into the unhealthy thing. Is gossip always toxic?
I don't think it's always toxic. I think with our girlfriends, come on now, we can't have girlfriends. A little gossip. It becomes toxic when that is. So this is a perfect example. We have, you got your girlfriends where it's like, girl, did you hear about this? And it's just like, that's what you do. But that's not the majority of what you guys talk about at all. What I've had friendships over the years where I learned, and in full honesty and transparency, I can remember probably in my 20s, early 30s, just at periods in my life where it was some toxic stuff I was dealing with, and I probably was presenting, more toxic, and I was able to kind of connect with these people. And then as I started kind of growing and getting more in my spirituality and releasing the stuff that didn't work for me, that's when I started noticing, dang, our whole conversation is based on talking about other people. And as I was growing and not wanting to do that friendship started to fracture because they still wanted to kind of just stay in that space of calling to talk about this person and that person. When you start growing, when you start really honoring yourself, there's no room to have the whole foundation of a friendship built on the toxicity of talking about other people. But a little bit of gossip every now and then.
A little bit. Maybe 10%. 20, 10%. Right. Because I think it comes into the conversation. I mean, because it is. I've had those friendships where it's just been gossip. And I was just like, this doesn't. Eventually, eventually you wake up and be like, girl, how are you doing? And then you be like, okay, there may not be anything to talk about. Right.
Exactly.
Because
Yep.
And then you go right back to talking about, well, girl, did you hear blah, 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 blah. I feel like gossip is only good when you are including yourself in the gossip. Girl, let me tell you what happened to me today.
What I did. Yes, we have lots of those with our best girlfriends. But yeah, you are so true. I just reflect back on just again, some of the ones that I'm talking about, I had to lovingly release. It just became that. It was like every conversation was, did you see what they just posted? Or did you see this? Or did you see what their outfit they're wearing? And it didn't make me, I didn't feel good going there. Like if we're all honest with ourselves, we can tune into our bodies and know how stuff makes us feel, right? Some people, that makes them feel good because, again, that's become their baseline. But when you've done the growth, like I said, growth disrupts friendships if everybody's not on this trajectory of growth. So when you've done the growth and that no longer resonates with you, you have to make a decision. Are you going to allow yourself to kind of go back to what you've become accustomed to doing with these individuals, or are you going to stay steady on your course of growth? Because if you do, it's a good chance that those friendships will change or possibly even end.
Right.
But what's in is going to be amazing.
Yeah. It's funny. I always wonder, like, when you do get into those friendships that are, a little bit rough, like, how do you you want them to own it? You want accountability.
Yeah.
And how do you start to if you can you be a game changer to be like, how do I start to make this friend a little bit more accountable without them feeling shameful? And is
Yeah.
that even something you like when you're in a friend group? But I'm saying group, like more than even just one friend. It could be a multiple of friends. What does that look like? How do you start to like change the trajectory within that friend group?
Yeah, yeah. You want to be careful to express how whatever's going on made you feel. So you don't want to come in like you're the authority, the moral police, right?
Right. Right.
So you want to really be very intentional about how you perceive something and how it made you feel. You want to have that conversation. Um, and then it's up to them if they're going to do something about it. They may be defensive. They may say, I don't care. They may say, this is who I am. Because we cannot create in someone else's reality. So we can't change them. We can't make them hold themselves accountable. What I think oftentimes happens is that we need people to agree with seeing things our way. And
Yes.
yes, that part. And so when
That
they don't agree that, oh, I can see how you felt that way, or you're probably right about it, then we get up in arms, and we state our truth, we state how we're feeling. It's not a matter of being judgmental about them, and then it's up to the person if they're going to be receptive to that.
Hmm. Hmm. I love the fact that when you were just like, you want that person that has to agree with you.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes you want the choir.
You want the choir. You're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want the choir. You really, really do. How should women at our age really handle our conflicts when we get to this point where we're like, okay, girl, I'm not agreeing, but how do you even start to really approach the things that probably have been brewing for a while?
Yeah. So number one, you want to release attachment to outcome, right? I say that to my clients all the time as it pertains to whatever.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? An example.
Release attachment. So when someone starts dating somebody, oh my God, how's it going to work out? Are we going to make it? I say release attachment to outcome. Take what, just take what you can learn or growth or whatever. So sometimes, when you are approaching a friend about something that you have an issue with, you may need it to turn out a certain way. You may say to yourself, I need this person to agree with me. That may not be the outcome, and that's okay. So you have to say, okay, what is my intention? If you, Natalie, I truly believe if we go into anything with the right intentions, we get what we're supposed to get out of it. It may not be what we hoped. It may not be, what we envisioned. But if we go in with the right intentions, we're going to get the data and the information and the response back that we need to get back. You go in loving with the right intention to a friend and you're telling them about how something hurt you and that friend dismisses it. Guess what? That's still valuable data for you.
Right.
Because it's telling you that this person is not really, taking your feelings into consideration, and that gives you information on what direction you may need to go in with that situation. So the right intentions, communication, as with any relationship, is key. As we get older, we have to be comfortable about having the hard conversations. We have to get rid of this belief that confrontation is a bad thing, because it's not. People think
Can you say that for the people in the back?
Confrontation is not a bad thing. Confrontation is an opportunity for you to get back on track. And so for so many people, they run from confrontation. You can never grow. If you have a friendship where you guys can't challenge each person with, confronting some hard truths, you don't have a friendship. That's not a friendship. I joke. One of my longest friends is so funny, and we joke. I remember there was a time, and I was dating someone, and that person did something for me, and it was someone who was at that time really breadcrumbing me, I wasn't really getting much. And so when I got something, whatever that little something was, I was like, oh, he did this. And I remember her saying, She said, "Oh, we celebrating mediocrity now, huh?" Look,
And there's that part. But see, I love that.
I loved it too. Like,
I love when people can call me on my shit.
yes,
Dr.
because
Rose.
she loved me. I knew it wasn't coming from jealousy, envy. It wasn't coming from any of that stuff. It was coming from someone who truly loved me and wanted more from me than, what she obviously saw. We knew each other. And so it's amazing how from her, I could receive that. But some other friends that I know, depending on that dynamics, it would have come off a different way because it may have been some different dynamics there. And it's so interesting because fast forward a few years, she found herself in a similar situation and she said something. I said, "Oh, so we celebrating mediocrity now." She was like, and she's like, "Damn, like you got me." I was like, but it's like iron sharpens iron. Right? It's like, and these people love you. They love you and they want the best. We know those friends who truly love us and want the best of us. And it's not about competition. It's not about holding you back. It's about really celebrating your wins like it's their wins.
Can I ask, I always wonder, and I'll hear people like, I don't compete, I don't compete. But you realize like there's actually competition going on or there's envy going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you just may miss it altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not even paying attention like you should. But how does that even start in women? Like I always wonder, like, when do we start competing, especially if we're going through a change and we're changing together? I know like people are losing weight or they may be getting married or just certain dynamics are just shifting.
Yeah.
And y'all are growing, but y'all are growing together, but it feels like, oh, you're changing or you may be getting attention.
Yeah. So those specific examples that you just named, like losing weight or getting married, I've worked with enough clients and patients over the years where I've known folks, especially I could go back to the time. Remember, now we have Ozempic and all the GLPs, but there was a time early on in my practice where everyone was getting the weight loss surgery, right?
Yep.
And I had several clients that had it done, and it was just a common occurrence that they were coming in and their friendships were dropping off like flies. And they were just like, because now, like I said, any type of change or growth can disrupt, because if a person was always known as pardon my French, but the overweight friend, and now that's not the overweight friend anymore. Some other folks may have a little disruption, like, oh my God, where does that place me? Whatever. But then when that happens, that's for that person to look at themselves and say, what is really going on with me?
Right.
And to really evaluate themselves. The same when a person gets married or they get, I remember starting dating this guy, and he had invited me over a couple times, and I had gone over to his place a few times, and I remember one of my friends saying something like, "You've been over his house, like, I'm just going to use it. You've been over his house 3 times, and you've only come to visit my new place, whatever." I won't say, because I don't know if it's a family show, but I'm not going to even say what I said to the girl. Like, it was like, because it was the first thing that came out of my mouth, because I was so shocked to hear that. But it was just like, I'm celebrating, I'm sharing something like, oh my God, this is a new budding relationship. I'm excited about it. We've connected a few times. And instead of coming back and matching this excitement, it all became about, what I haven't done for her. And that was like it was like hitting a brick wall, like, ooh. So when that happens, immediately now you're going to be very careful about sharing things.
Is it because that person feels like they're losing you?
Absolutely.
And they're maybe losing you to somebody else, so therefore your availability is not the same. Is that what it is?
Absolutely. But as I mentioned, that's an opportunity for that person to say, okay, what's this really about? I should be happy for my friend if she's this new budding relation. What is this really about? Just like, I mean, let's be honest, we've probably all felt a little tinge of, oh, when a friend does get something or something happens that we would love to experience ourselves. But it's like when that happens, it's for you to say, I always say, I have a very good friend that does extremely well for herself. And I just came across a Facebook post from 10 years ago when she purchased her new beautiful home on the water. I mean, gorgeous. And I was like, I'm as happy for her as she is. I said, and I'm like, because this gives me some place to visit this summer, that type of thing. But what it also did was it kind of raised my bar of what I could do. Like our friends who are doing great gives us a glimpse into what's possible for us. Instead of being jealous about it, we can learn, or it can motivate us enough to say, if that's what you want, because I don't want everything my friends want or they strive for, but if they are achieving things. I remember I had on my vision board this car when it first came out, the S550 Mercedes, the big boy, it was beautiful. And I had it on my vision board. Had a girlfriend who had never heard about it, saw my vision board. The next year she bought the car. Do you know I was happy like I got the car? Like there was no part of me that was just like, how did she get it before I did? Because I celebrated that because now I get a chance to ride in it.
Right. You're like, okay, I don't have it, but girl, where are we going? Where are we going?
Yeah. But the same person later on, as things started happening for me, I noticed that it wasn't that same energy. I noticed it was very disappointing, but again, it was data. Like we got to accept when we see the red flags, don't try to change it. You can't love somebody out of, their red flags. But you have to take that information as data and you confront it, communicate it if you want to. But if it's if that doesn't change, then you may have to lovingly release.
Yeah, I love that. I do. I'm always like, okay, what is my role? What do I need to do? How, I'm understanding like collecting data and how does it affect me? How do I feel? Do I miss this person in my life? I think that's one of the things. It's just like, oh, it's always been familiar. It's what I do. It's our routine. Is it going to be weird if it gets disrupted?
It will be weird. It will be weird for temporarily. It will be. It's just part of the grieving because you're going to grieve it. You're going to grieve.
It's like a break. You know what? I realized breaking up with your girlfriends.
Listen, yes.
It's like breaking up it's worse than breaking up with a man because you feel like, but I guess also because you like, I've poured my heart out to you.
Yes.
Is it going to be, and I think sometimes women are like, is this going to be kept sacred or is it going to be weaponized against
and I've had folks to weaponize some stuff, which but what I was most proud of is that I knew stuff. I would not go to that level. Like, I say my birthday twin, Michelle Obama, say when they go low, we go high. So as disappointed as I am, I would never do that because I consider friendship sacred. But it will be weird. Getting back to what you said, it will be awkward for a time as you grieve that because it is a grieving. One of the persons that I had to lovingly release, about 8-9 years later, we were on a flight together. And, after, she found me after we got off the flight and she said, I miss you. And, and I said, I miss you too. I hadn't talked to her because it was ugly. Some of the things she did was just unforgivable. Mm-hmm. And for a moment, it was almost like, oh, we're in the same city together. Maybe we can reach out. Maybe we can hang out. And it was just like, I had to be okay with just having that level of interaction to just acknowledge that there was love there, that we recognize, that we had great time together, but I could not allow myself to revisit that because it was enough evidence over the years that I could not trust this person again. Yeah.
Yeah. That journey of healing and understanding like where you are with a person. I think also it being able to invite them back in and you being able to be like, okay, this is a door I can open today.
Yeah, today.
Today. I don't know how it's gonna look is
Yes.
day by day. Yeah, to possibly
Yeah.
rebuild some
And
so
you can. There are some that you can rebuild. So I don't want anyone to leave and think that there are friendships that you can't possibly rebuild because I believe that I believe you can, but only you know, and that's case by case basis. You know,
yeah.
sometimes things can be done that it's just no coming back for. You can forgive them. Forgiveness does not mean you have access to me any longer. You
Yes.
can forgive without having access, and you can lovingly release a person without having closure. Get rid of this idea that you have to have closure with folks when you let them go, because there's no such thing. I always say that there's no such thing as closure. Only thing that gives you closure is a zip on your coat or buttons on a shirt. Like there's no such thing as closure. What closure really is this desire you have for this person to say you were right and
Mm.
on you. And that does not happen.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. 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 Well, Dr. Rose, we have
Oh,
a couple more minutes before we close out. I have what we always do our rapid fire questions.
uh-oh.
We have about 10 seconds to answer them.
Okay.
So the first one, can competitive friendships ever be healthy?
Yes, competitive friendships can be healthy if they're coming from a place of we're going to both grow from this and not of a place of wanting to hurt the other person. Just like if you have a friend and you guys both play sports, that's a competition. That can be healthy for sure.
Is jealousy always insecurity?
Jealousy is usually a reflection of some perceived inadequacy that you have within yourself.
Mm. So is that it? That's basically, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said what was you said? Go back to the question again. I want to
Is
make sure
jealousy always insecurity?
it is. It is. It's typical. Yeah, some insecurity that maybe you don't recognize or have not addressed within yourself.
Okay. Should everything be confronted?
Ooh, that's a good one. If it has the potential to cause serious damage, it should be confronted. If it's something that is minute or is not a big deal, nah.
Is it just data? Is that
It's
just data?
data. It's
It's
data. It's we gonna store it, but it may
okay.
not need to be confronted. Yeah.
Okay. Can friendships survive betrayal?
They can, but just like an intimate relationship, it takes a lot. Like I said, it takes a lifetime to build trust and a second to destroy it. So you've got to be willing to put in the work to rebuild it, and you have to ask yourself that.
All right. Last two. Is it okay to outgrow a friend? And what is the best way to let them know that you're no longer friends? It's a
Yes.
loaded question.
Yep, it's okay to outgrow them. Never tell them I've outgrown you because that again is a superiority thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's up to the person. I with both these folks, I had enough conversations before that I never had the final conversation of this friendship is over. It was just no communication. It came to a point where it was just I'm not communicating anymore. But everyone's different. But again, I wasn't looking for them to agree with my decision. And so I didn't feel it was necessary for me to have that conversation that I've had over the years to avoid the disconnect.
And then final question, what boundary do women struggle with most in their friendships?
I believe the boundary they struggle with most is understanding that your friends aren't accessible necessarily to you at all times, especially those friends who have children, significant others. That was just something that I've encountered over the years, being so young and having children so young. A lot of my friend groups did not have children or spouses as I did, and did not understand that the accessibility wasn't, at any time was not possible. Yeah.
And this is a bonus one. How how do you heal yourself so you can attract what you want in your friendships? Like what are the key things that you need to do to make sure that you are attracting the energy you want in your life?
The best thing you can do is to treat yourself as a best friend. Like
Mm.
however you treat yourself is what you're going to attract. So be good to yourself, love on yourself. Just the way you would want a friend to treat you, treat yourself that way. There's a lot of people wanting these valuable friendships, but they don't even treat themselves well. And you cannot attract that level of intimacy, of connection, of depth that we want in our friendships if you have not made peace with yourself.
That is bars, Dr. I love that one. Be a best friend to yourself. Thank you. Bravo. I appreciate you. This was freaking amazing. I feel like I need to have you back on some other things, girl. You unpack it. Unpack it. I love this. Thank you. You really brought it back to a lot of like self accountability, and I love that. And I think that's what everybody needs to understand in this. Especially at this age. It's not that we don't. I really do understand the point of alignment. I know that's even what I'm going through. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody else for tuning in. Follow Dr. Rose Moten. She is
Moten. Yep. Moten. And that's my centers workshop, but I have mine as well, drrosemoten.com. Moten, like molten lava, but no L.
Yes. Thank you. We'll see you guys next month. Happy Women's History Day. Spring is on the way. And I love you guys. You come into the after party if you want to talk a little bit more about this topic. Thank you, everyone. See you soon and have a great night.
Join Stacked After Hours, The Spot, where grown men and women gather to have candid, also honest discussions about the state of life, love, and more. The Spot is a hybrid of in-person and weekly virtual gatherings. Join our Facebook group and answer our daily questions. Subscribe to our YouTube for our weekly live talk shows and join us on Zoom for our talk show after parties for lively conversations with other opinionated, grown, and sexy professionals. Just search, like, follow, and subscribe to Stack After Hours on Facebook groups and YouTube. Also like and follow our brand pages at Be Stacked Wellness on Facebook and IG. So wherever you are, at home or abroad, pull out your laptop, tablet, or smartphone and join in the conversation with the members of Stacked After Hours, The Spot by Be Stacked Wellness. See you there.
As you know, and if you are new to the Stacked family, we always keep our conversations lit and enlightening.